Would you pay Twitter for an undo button?
And why is Facebook pushing a version of Instagram for the under 13s? Vertical Hold is proudly brought to you by Aussie Broadband, changing the game with their award-winning network and Australian-based support.
Hi there. Welcome to Vertical Hold Behind the Tech News, the tech podcast where we catch up with Australia's leading tech journalists to dive into the big stories of the week. I'm Alex Kidman, and I'm joined as usual by Adam Turner. Now, Adam, this week it's been announced that William Shatner, who turned 90 recently, is about to be turned into an immortal AI. And look, with Big Bill out of the way, who else from the sci-fi canon do you reckon should be next in line for digital immortality?
Oh man, it's a little out of left field, but I think there's only one choice. My vote has to be for Futuramo's Morbo the Annihilator. Make it so, or I will destroy you!
Oh, I can't agree. I can't agree, but that's only because you're presuming Morbo's ever going to be defeated and not around. He's just going to destroy his own AI, let it fight, lest it annihilate him.
Perhaps.
You haven't thought this through,
No, I
sir.
clearly have
You
not.
haven't. Or maybe I've overthought it.
No,
Either-
never.
Either way, we're also joined by Fairfax tech columnist, help desk, and Meta podcast host, Peter Wells. Peter, welcome back to the show.
Why, thank you, lads.
Now, which sci-fi AI would you want to converse with if you had the opportunity?
I think Bishop from Alien.
Going the Android route.
Solid choice.
Nice. And obviously, quite handy with a knife and fingers too.
Indeed. Yeah, I'd love him to teach me that trick. And he was one of the few that had personality back in the day.
Well, speaking of getting social with digital sources, shall we say, this week, it's all about the social networks, with Twitter turning 16, Jack Dorsey scoring 2.9 million for an NFT of his first tweet, and yet we still can't edit or undo tweets yet. But it appears the tide is turning. Peter, what's the story here?
So Twitter seemed to be testing a bunch of subscription services over there on their platform, and so we're starting to see rumors. People are going through the code at the moment that are in the beta versions of the Android app and things like that, and they're spotting references to an undo tweet, and it also seems to be linked together with subscription services. And they're also sending out surveys to users saying, "Would you pay for the ability, well, first of all, would you pay for Twitter? And also, would you pay for the ability to undo tweets?" I think it's really interesting that they're going for the undo rather than the edit button, which is what everyone has been asking for the last decade. But it does make sense to me, the sense that they're saying that, look, once you tweet, that's done. You can never take it back. People will see it. But if you realize in that 30 seconds after you hit send that there's something really bad in that tweet that you want to take back, you've got that breathing room to take it back.
So that's the difference between undo and delete here, because I can already delete tweets, of course. But
Yeah.
obviously, if I've said something stupid, somebody might have seen it.
Yeah, it's going the same kind of idea that you see in Gmail or Outlook, where you can, you've got just that breathing space. It's not technically the ability. Sure, you can go in and delete a tweet after the fact, but like you said, if you're a politician, you're probably that deleted tweet is probably going to get a lot more press than had you just left the tweet up there, because there are services that follow things like that. So yeah, the idea is, think before you send, I guess, rather than go in and change something, from however long after the fact. And I think the idea behind that is they don't want people to be able to go back 5 years and change a tweet that has a lot of replies and is kind of already out there on the public record. I guess the idea is, like, once you've committed to a tweet and other people are now starting to respond to it, you don't get that ability to take it back. Although I think they could have also gone the Slack route, which is just showing that the tweet is edited and maybe giving you the ability to see the version history of a tweet. I think that would be an equally good solution.
Part of the problem, as you said, is you could tweet one thing and get people to reply to it, and then go back and change the original tweet so it looked like they were replying to something else. and then
Mm.
say, "Ha, look what these people think is so fabulous because I actually tricked them and pulled the rug out from under them." But this tweet has been edited would be really good for doing that. But I think also, like you say, the whole idea has always been once it's out there, it's out there. And as soon as, or the other thing you could do, not just change something from long ago, but you could put something up quickly to say something to your immediate followers that might be a little bit distasteful, a little bit sexist, a little bit racist, a little bit whateverist, and then go and quickly change it. And then say, oh, no, no, it never happened. So just this sleight of hand of being able to, say one thing and then pretend you said something else, I just seems to go against the whole idea of how Twitter is supposed to work.
See, I've got to say, I am totally, totally 100% against the idea of any kind of edit function in Twitter. And I say that as someone who makes typos in Twitter, occasionally tweets in anger or in disgust at things. I like to think that I'm right because I'm me, but I'm probably not all the time. But no, I think that permanency of Twitter is really what gives it its particular flavor and even its kind of sense of historical record. The idea of being able to say, oh, this has been edited, well, I don't know how many people are actually going to check that version history if they even can. And especially if you're hiding it behind a kind of subscription layer, it becomes very weird, unless, of course, Twitter decides down the track, right, everything on Twitter is a subscription layer. If you just want to tweet, it's going to cost you. As soon as you want my money, I want features.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, look, to be honest, I've wanted Twitter to offer subscription for years now. I just think that that would be, even if it was something as small as like $1 a year, I think that that would cut down the amount of bots, the amount of crazy people, the amount of outright kind of trolling and things like that. Once you're committed to buying an account, then yeah, you're going to take it just that slight bit more seriously, I guess. And there's so much. Twitter just exhausts me these days. Like it used to be, it was the my favorite, almost almost my favorite tech product of like the early 2000s, and these days I just find it excruciating.
Do you think there's also a danger if they introduce subscriptions for some people and give those people extra features that you're sort of fragmenting the platform? There's already this kind of digital divide between the blue tick people and the rest of us.
Mm.
As I
You
say,
mean the rest of us? You've got a blue tick.
I was going to say
I'm the commoner
you're
here.
the only one in this conversation who doesn't have a blue tick. I didn't mean to rub it in, but there's like
I'm one of the people, thank
yes,
you.
he's one
the
of the
liege.
people, one of the plebs. But like creating more tiers in more social tiers in Twitter would again seem to go against the idea of what Twitter is all about to me.
Depends how they roll it out. Like I can see, yeah, I think you're absolutely right that if you can pay for extra features, that feels a bit gross. Especially the way Twitter has presented itself for the last 16 years, that just feels a bit wrong. But if it was something like if you have 5,000 followers, then your subscription is $1 a month, and if you have 50,000 followers, then your subscription is $10 a month because there's value in speaking to that many people, then I could see them going that way and not offending too many people. But again, it's all kind of. I think a lot of this is kind of controlled leaks to see what people think about some of these ideas.
Sure. Although I don't know about scaling it up for Twitter followers. I'd almost be tempted to say the more followers you've got, the more of an audience you've got. Potentially, the more value you're bringing as yourself, whoever you are, to that platform. Whereas if you said, right, the highest rate tier, and I don't, let's be honest here, I don't think anyone is thinking that they're going to spend, Netflix level money per month on Twitter,
Hmm.
for example. But I think if you said, right, whatever that highest tier is, whatever they think they can get away with charging, let's face it, that's capitalism. That's your entry level. That's your egg account. Because otherwise, if you're saying, oh, it's free for everyone, but if you're really popular, you have to pay, then you're instantly saying, right, and by the way, we want all the trolls we can get.
Mm, yeah. I saw a GIF of what the not the edit feature, the undo feature would look like, and I was surprised in that all it really seemed to be was like a 2-3 second countdown, like when a line goes across and goes down to 0, and that's it,
Mm.
you're done. And to me, I don't think that's enough to actually make people stop and think, oh, crap, I think that was a really bad thing to say, or hang on, there's a really stupid mistake in there. To me, you don't tend to notice the mistake until you see it live. So what I think that should do is actually when you hit tweet, it should show you a really big preview of what's about to be there and then have a button underneath that says, are you sure this is a good idea? I think that would be much likely to, because when you tweet in anger and it just says, are you sure? It's like, yes, I'm freaking sure. You need to see it. You need to be shown it. And
Yeah.
to really think about, hang on, have I made a mistake, or have I really made a mistake?
You need a little clippy that pops up and says, this looks like it's a career-ending tweet. Are you sure?
Yes. You look like you're trying to shoot yourself in the foot. Would you like some help with that?
You may end up on
Media
Media Watch's
Watch.
results
Yeah,
of this tweet. Are you sure about this?
Yeah.
Not naming any names.
No, not naming any names.
See, I guess the problem there is implementing it across all the platforms that you can tweet from.
Yeah.
Desktop, you can do what you like. You've sort of got the space, maybe even tablet, but on a mobile, and especially when people are using mobiles with low-res screens, they might have enlarged fonts, that kind of stuff. Throwing it up large is a problem, but I agree the timing thing is weird because I think if you made it long, like if you said, oh, you got to wait 20 seconds to tweet, nobody's going to tweet.
No.
That's just going to be too much of a pain. But also it gets away from that immediacy and conversation and kind of flowing blog style that Twitter has. People want to comment on things in real time.
I don't know. I mean, I use the undo send in Gmail every day. Like every single day, I type something and realize that I spelt someone's name wrong, or I said something I shouldn't have, and I'll use that. I think you get about 30 seconds in Gmail to scan over the email. But the thing is, it's just a progress bar, like you were saying, where if I don't do anything, it sends. And I think that that's the way that Twitter would do it as well, is that the tweet will go ahead unless you intervene. And that seems to be the way that Outlook and Gmail both do it on the web. And I think that's probably a good way to go. I don't know. I think that you would probably find people starting to use it quite a bit if they brought that out.
Email, I think, is a little different. There's the professional side of it, although there's always that endlessly amusing side as a journalist when you get sent a recall from someone's Exchange server and you're not on their Exchange server. So it just highlights the fact that, hey, there's something in this earlier email that was wrong. That's a bit of a red flag. But I don't know. I think that the Twitter immediacy thing is going to be a bit of a challenge in the same way as they had that feature. I don't think it's still going, where if you were forwarding or retweeting a news article, they'd kind of ping you and say, hey, are you sure you don't appear to have read this yet?
Now that
You
they
want to
still
follow the
do
link
that,
through and make sure it's actually saying what you think it's.
They asked me to read the article I wrote a couple of days ago when I tweeted it. So they still do that.
But that again, I know so many people who have tweeted, ironically enough, to say, oh, I really hate this because I just want to send the tweet. Twitter is communication for the impatient.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, look, I'm for the first time in years excited by Twitter again, and it's still a hellscape right now. Don't get me wrong, but I think they're making quite a few announcements that show that they kind of remember what they were supposed to be. Today they bought a company that works with APIs, and the whole acquihire of this company was to improve the APIs that they give to third-party Twitter apps. And I use a third-party Twitter client. I use Tweetbird. I hate the official client. And to that again is just a tiny little olive branch to say we understand that this is one of the things you've found really frustrating about this platform. We're going to work to fix on it and to fix it. And yeah, I mean, spaces, we've seen spaces and super follows and all of these kind of things that suddenly show that Twitter remembered that technology is supposed to evolve. Like the product hasn't changed in 6 years. The only big difference, the only big product difference was Trump in the last 6 years, and that was an external force. That wasn't them. That was just them milking this
That
cash
was a
cow.
bug, not a feature.
Yes.
Exactly right. Yeah.
And you kind of touched on what I was going to bring up next, that if you were going to hand over a couple of bucks a month for Twitter, what else would you expect for your money? Because I don't think they could expect people to hand over money just for an edit or undo button alone.
Look, it's a tricky one for me because, in a way, I don't want them to do what happened with like Microsoft Word, for example. So Word at a certain point in time, and I'm going to show how old I am by saying Word 6 was just about goddamn perfect. It did everything I wanted it to do. It did it really well based on the technology we had at the time, and it was fine. And then, because Microsoft was starting to roll into subscriptions and the Office 365 environment we have today, they added feature after feature after feature after feature. Eventually, they worked out, hey, lots of people are not using these features. We've made this too complicated. We've added too much. To me, the beauty of Twitter is that instant communication, is just that basic, right, I can do just these core things. I'm not doing a whole bunch of other features or apps or ideas or pieces in there. So I would be cautious. In a sense, I'm probably the guy who would pay for vanilla Twitter,
Mm.
while other people can go off and waste their money on Twitter with embedded games or whatever else you think they're going to add or whatever else they might add. What about you, Peter?
Um, Again, that's why I'm really excited by the API stuff, because that was the Twitter back in 2008, 2009, where they had a fully open API so that people could build on top of their platform. And so you saw really innovative third-party clients out there. Like there were some Twitter clients that just showed you tweets from your
Mm.
local area, and then there were some Twitter clients that only showed you, there was a whole bunch of really interesting stuff going on. Like some that were focused on the hashtag idea of creating rooms and things like that. So I think if Twitter can focus back on that, of saying, look, developers, to take the Microsoft route, developers, we love you. We're sorry we excluded you for the last couple of years. And here is
Sorry, we beat you with a stick and made your apps not work.
exactly right. We killed so many great little apps out there. But that way, the official Twitter client can continue to be the vanilla experience, and people can make really interesting stuff based on that, and it wouldn't upset the kind of Twitter you know and love.
So, keeping kids safe online these days is obviously very topical, and it's interesting to see that Facebook is saying that it wants to release a kid-friendly Instagram. Now, I don't know if those words belong in the same sentence, to be honest. My kids, I've got two kids who are teenagers. Alex has got three kids who are maybe not all teenagers anymore. I've lost track.
No, I actually have like adults living in my
Adults
house.
in the house.
Aside from myself and my wife, it's
Yes.
scary. It's
Um,
scary. Peter, this is your future.
Yes, Pete's got two under five, I want to say. So this is all ahead of him, mate. Nothing to stress about at all. But do we think that kids under 13 need Instagram?
Absolutely not. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of this one at all. I think that look, it's a really tricky one. First of all, we should explain that the reason 13 is the magical cutoff age for most services in the states is because you can't use a digital service to advertise to children in the states. It's one of their laws, and so
Hmm.
because of that, most of the social networks cut off at 13 because they want to be able to advertise to everyone. So this would be what the Instagram for kids would be. It's basically just the same Instagram, rip out the ads, and off you go, and hopefully create kids who are addicted to the platform, which is just something I don't like at all. And it's tricky because we do use Facebook Kids Messenger in our house, and I don't like the fact that we use it because I'm not a huge fan of Facebook as a company. But I have to say it's beautifully done. Like it is. They've thought of everything that a parent might have concerns about. It's all there. So, like on the one hand, it's like, oh, I know what you're doing. You're just trying to get kids involved and addicted, like at such an early age. But at the same time, bloody hell, they do make their stuff for kids very, very well. If we're just basing it on Messenger, but again, I just don't know whether kids need to be sharing stuff like this? Do kids need a platform that is by nature supposed to be for the whole world rather than their circle of friends?
See, I think it's tricky because there's that line between need, and I totally get what you mean. And I mean, for the record, I said to my kids, right, I'm not going to be particularly happy or comfortable with you doing social networking at least until you hit 13. And they were okay with that. We discussed it. And I think that's a really simple parenting tip. Discuss technology with your kids. But the reality is, a lot of kids want to. There's a lot of social pressure around this, especially probably more towards that upper primary, just under 13-year-old kind of age bracket. And I can say, whilst it's anecdotal, that Instagram use was absolutely rife at the primary schools my kids went to
Mm.
for those kids who shouldn't have had accounts in the first place. I guess my concern, because they could, and they've said they're going to lock it down, that they're going to use machine learning so that adults can't message kids, and so that the content remains reasonably safe. And as we know, that stuff can go awry pretty quickly. But presuming they can lock it down, I think I've got more of an issue because the whole Instagram thing, or a lot of the Instagram thing, is about social pressure.
Mm.
It's look at my wonderful breakfast, look at this holiday destination I'm at, or look at me in a bikini. And while the kids shouldn't be in bikinis to speak of, I'm not entirely comfortable with that kind of pressure being placed on impressionable young people through a my first Instagram platform. Am I just being horribly conservative on that particular score?
No, I don't think so because that's exactly how I was looking at it as well. I was questioning that their definition of being safe on Instagram, but you need to be safe from Instagram as well. Um, I would be, I wouldn't be keen for my children to get on it, especially my daughter, because I know that body image can be a real issue at that
Mm.
age, and things like Instagram and other social media is just that can be a big part of it, and saying, "Oh, but she can't swap messages with grown-ups," is not going to protect her from that. And in some ways, that kind of stuff is more insidious. But to put on to go the devil's advocate, you could argue that, well, by not having a kids version of Instagram, then you are it just means that kids are using grown-up Instagram because they want to be on Instagram. Because everybody lies about their age to get onto these things. When my kids were in primary school, they had to have a Gmail account to do some of their classes, and they were under 13. So I had to
Mm.
lie about their ages to create them a Gmail account. So it happens all the time. Everybody does it. I don't think people really think much of it. So if my kid was 12 and really wanted to be on Instagram, would I rather them use kids' Instagram, or would I rather them pretend to be 13 and jump in with everybody else? Yeah, there's an argument either side there.
Mm. Yeah, totally. I think that's right. But to just underline that point that you've both made now, there's clear links between the more time someone spends on social media and their level of depression, and it is especially obvious in teens. That the older you get, the more you can seem to kind of switch off some of that stuff. But like you said, Alex, when a lot of Instagram is all about my life is better than yours. That's the kind of
Hmm.
main part of the product, and that tends to really impact kids a lot more than it impacts people who might be a little bit more stable in their view of the world, shall we say. But yeah, you're right. I get that idea as well, that kids are already on Instagram, so you may as well accept it. And I've got to say the social, the social stuff, the social pressuring actually happened with our 5-year-old. Our 5-year-old wanted to be on Facebook Messenger because some of her friends, this was especially during lockdown, some of her friends were on Messenger, and she can't read, but she sends them emoji and they send emoji back. And, so it just became one of those things. It was one of the few ways we could get her to stay in contact with kids she wasn't seeing during lockdown. So I think 2020 just broke a whole bunch of rules when it comes to parenting and screen time and all of that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. So maybe this is the perfect time for Instagram to be doing this.
And I guess the other side of it is, we have to face facts. We are old, decrepit men. We are not teenagers or young
Hey,
kids
speak for yourself.
ourselves.
I've lost 30 kilos in the last 3 years. Thank you very much.
All right, sorry.
And
You're less of an old, decrepit man.
I've started going to the gym, and I never thought I'd bloody say that.
I don't even know who you are anymore, Adam. But no, okay, you're less of a decrepit old man, but still, we are adults and we have grown up in a certain world. These are kids who are growing up in a much more digital world
Yes.
where a lot of this stuff is assumed. And I suppose you can also make the argument, it sort of ties into what you were saying, Peter, that there's communication opportunities here that did not exist when we were kids, for example, for some kids who, yes, and this definitely happens, could be bullied this way, but equally could find outreach and fellow souls who they could only talk to this way
Mm,
about the complex issues of growing up. It's never easy. It wasn't easy when I was a kid, and I think it's actually substantially harder now in an
mm.
online sense. And there's that side of it as well. I think there's a tricky balance here. I know which side I ultimately fell on in terms of my own parenting decisions, but Peter, you've got kids who are younger than both my kids and Adam's kids. At what point do you think you might be comfortable for them to take on more social network stuff if they were asking for it?
Look, I think we'd be like one of the. It's funny because we're considered to be early adopters when it comes to technology, um,
Hmm.
compared to most of her school friends. So most of my daughter's friends, she had an iPad way before they had her friends had iPads and those kind of things. And we're fairly okay about computers and technology and digital stuff being in the house. But yeah, we still draw the line at social, and I'm not sure when that's going to be. I think it's going to be like most things. It's going to be uh, the social pressure to get onto a social network is going to be the final kind of thing that tips us over. But I'm going to put it off as long as possible. But then again, I mean, there's so many great stories of like I've got a friend who is a teacher, and she says like no matter what, kids will find a way. Like she would find,
Hmm.
they're a Google school that she works at, and kids were using the edit features in Google Docs as a chat platform in classrooms because every other type of chat had been disabled in the school. So they were all just chatting in spreadsheets and stuff. Kids will find a way. They're smarter than us. They know how to get around this stuff better. They
Yes.
know every part of this in their fiber, in the fiber of their being. And so at a certain point, I think the best way to approach this as a parent, and especially as well, when you're the kind of parent who may spend way too much time staring at a device yourself, it's at a certain point you feel like a hypocrite talking to kids about some of this stuff. So for me, my way of approaching this, I think, is going to be. Thankfully, it's a couple of years away, but I think it's going to be along the lines of like, look, I know you're going to do it. Here's how to do it safely, and here's how to do it well, and here are some limits I'm going to set.
So it's sex education, but for social networks.
Which I think is basically, I mean, yeah, you are like, we talked earlier. There's once you send a tweet, it's there forever, and so uh, that is a that's a worthwhile thing to understand very early on. I think.
Yeah, I agree because I actually was thinking the same sort of thing about, the way that you, as a parent, as your children get older, you educate them about sex, educate them about relationships, you educate them about how to interact with the world, rather than just trying to shield them from the world. Because I don't really use Instagram, but my wife uses Instagram, and so the day that my daughter comes home from school and says, "I want an Instagram account," my wife will sit down with her and talk to her about it and say, okay, this is what it's good for, this is what it's not good for, this is what you've got to work through. And I don't think we would say to her now at the age of 14, I don't think we would say to her, no, you can't have one. But I think we would, the very first thing would be sitting down to have a conversation, just like, as you say, conversations about sex and relationships. That when someone's 14, if you've got 14-year-old kids and you haven't had any of those conversations, then you're setting yourself up for problems. It's the same thing.
Well, that just about wraps up another episode of Vertical Hold. Thanks to Peter for joining us for this week's show.
Oh, thanks for having me.
And look, as is our usual habit, Peter, now it's time for you to answer 3 quickfire questions. Where can people find your work online? Where can they find you on social media, possibly including Instagram? And of course, critically, which children's cartoon character is the best of all time?
You can find me at SMH, Meta Podcast, and the Help Desk, which is a daily tech podcast. Never started a daily tech podcast. That was silly. You can also follow me on the Twitters. It is at Peter Wells, and Bandit from Bluey. I know it's a really new show, but god damn it, Bluey is the greatest thing to ever be made.
Bandit is an excellent, 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 excellent dog.
You can't go with it. Is Bandit the dad?
Yeah.
Yes, I love the because
Get
I've
out,
seen
Adam.
but I was just checking because
Leave Australia now.
one of my favorite lines, because like I said, my kids are 14 and 17, and the four of us have sat down and watched like an hour of Bluey. We've just binged it, right? But one of my favorite lines was when the girls were misbehaving and Bandit calls them the Dodgy Brothers. And of course, you have to be Australian and of a certain age to get why that is so funny. But yes, I
Yep.
think Bandit is a very good choice.
And as always, you can find us making out like bandits online at Vertical Hold AU on Twitter, or at verticalhold.com.au on the web, or via the Vertical Hold Facebook page, which is still up as of this week.
And as always, thanks everyone for tuning in. Don't forget to tell your friends about us. We really want to grow the podcast this year and reach new people. So get out there, leave us a review on your podcasting platform of choice, and help us spread the good word in 2021. Vertical Hold is proudly brought to you by Aussie Broadband, changing the game with their award-winning network and Australian-based support.
140% CPU usage. Adam,
Yeah.
your Mac is on fire.
Yeah, pretty much.